Hello once again, welcome to the show. One of the common mistakes we see with people who are looking at property investment is that they look at one market. You know, they look at the Australian market, or they might look at the Sydney market, or they might look at the Melbourne market. Or, as we're going to deal with in this case, they might look at the regions. So what are the regions? You know, we can break them down into many forms, but Simon Pressley from Propertyology and his team have done a really interesting insight into the wine regions, and we're going to look at that. We'll look at what's involved in that and what some of the opportunities are. We say hello once again to Simon Pressley from Propertyology. Simon, thank you for your time. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin. What's better than talk about vino?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Are you a red or a white man?
Mate, I love a good red, to tell you the truth.
Actually, having had a few wines with you, I know that that is the case, and I'm similar to you. Although I can't stand a few, I can probably have one. So anyway, mate, forgetting whether it's red or white, let's look at the wine regions. Can I firstly ask you, before we bring our first graphic up, why did you look at this category?
Well, I think with property, very often people generalise and stereotype. Especially if someone spent most or all their life living in a capital city. When the word region is raised, some people automatically think of a dust town or they think of a mining town. Well, the reality is there's nearly 200 individual regional locations. Some of those are really big. The Newcastle Wollongongs and others are smaller. So we just sort of thought, well, let's categorise a bunch of different locations that are our beautiful wine regions.
Okay, well, let's bring up our first graphic then. Let's have a look at a map of those wine regions.
So it's our cooler states where wine obviously can't grow in hot places like Darwin. So whether it's Launceston in northern New South Wales, whether it's the Riverina Launceston in Tasmania, whether it's the Riverina in New South Wales or the Central West, places like Orange, Margaret River, in Western Australia. Victoria's got several wine regions in and around Mildura, Mornington Peninsula, Yarra, and of course South Australia's got the beautiful Clare and the Barossa Valley. So that's where they're located.
Okay, well, let's bring up our second graphic then, and we'll look at the townships that make up these regions. I guess that's the next step. Simon? Yeah,
just before we do that, the wine region might surprise people how big it is and how important it is to Australia. The actual bottles of wine, we sell about $4.6 billion of just bottles of wine nationally each year. But when we look at the benefits through the supply chain, through the manufacturing process, through the transporting of it, employment, tourism is a very important part of wine. Who hasn't been to a beautiful winery somewhere? It's $40 billion, $40 billion annually that our wine industry generates for our national economy. That surprised me when we did this research report. It's significant.
Very significant, and must be a lot of people apart from you and I drinking wine, that's for sure, my friend.
Yeah, and that's why I say that is that's one of the drivers for the real estate markets in these wine regions. If you have a look at this graphic and some of the median house prices, and mind you, lots of people, if people are querying, let's say you live in Sydney or Melbourne, why does someone want to live in regional Australia? Well, plenty of people actually holiday in these wine regions because of how beautiful they are and the lifestyle that they offer. So that's one reason why people live there. People retire there because they're so nice. The cost of housing in a lot of cases, you're talking sub $450,000 for a good quality, house in the heart of town somewhere. Housing is actually very, very affordable.
You're just looking across at some of those areas. You look at Griffith, a median price of $360,000. You go across to WA. And, in the Barossa, where, why wouldn't you want to live there? $352,000 for a median price. They're all very affordable. In fact, just quickly scanning around, there's only one or two that would be over the $450 mark.
Yeah. And they're sort of, Mornington Peninsula is a very expensive part of town, beautiful part of town, but I guess its proximity to Melbourne drives that up. And similarly, Macedon Ranges is quite expensive as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a few key areas there. Are you happy to move off that graph? We'll just move to the next one, which is looking at the performance of some of those areas, Simon.
Yeah, and this is going to really surprise people, some of these official statistics. Over the last 20 years, Sydney's median house prices increased by 6.9%. Spectacular average annual growth. Quite a few of these regional markets over that 20 years have outperformed that. Let's look at some of them. Places like Cessnock, 7.9% increase over the last 20 years. Mudgee, 7.6%, more than Sydney. Australia's oldest regional city, Launceston, 7.5% over the last 20 years. Again, more than Sydney. Places like Orange, a little bit less than Sydney, but 6.4% over the last 20 years is not far off what Sydney's done over that 20-year period of time. So lots of these locations have performed equal to, or in several cases, better than Sydney over the last 20 years. And if we look more recently, during the 2019 calendar year, almost all of these locations performed better than Sydney and Melbourne. Over the last 3 to 5 years, they have been the best performed property markets in Australia in a lot of cases. Launceston is a classic example. We know median house prices grown by about 30% over the last 3 years, whereas Sydney's seen about 5% growth over that period of time. Melbourne's about 15% over that period of time. So they perform very, very well from a capital growth perspective. The reason they do that, they do have quite a diverse economy. We're talking about wine, but food manufacturing in general, tourism, general agriculture is part of their economy. They don't get smashed with large volumes of supply because they don't have the big construction industry workforce that our big cities do. So wine regions can generally just keep ticking along with sustainable growth year after year and not as volatile.
Yeah, just the point I'd like to make, and I'm just quickly looking at this graph now, but just tell me if I'm correct here. If take out Sydney as an example, if we look at these regional markets, some of these towns, and ignoring the 1 year, the October to 2019, if you look at the 3 year and the 5 year figures, they're fairly. The point I'm trying to make here is that you've got to be in this market for the long haul, not the short haul. I mean, the Sydney market might give you peaks and troughs, but in the regional markets, over the long term, you'll probably do quite well.
Yeah, and they are less volatile than the big markets.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, they are a lot less volatile. And the main cause of that, or two main causes, they're not as expensive. So when every market will, from time to time, have a shock of some kind caused by a variety of things when prices can retreat. When a property price is already very, very expensive, it's got further to fall too. Whereas we've just been talking about the median house price in these locations, it's very affordable. So when it has its downturn, it typically is a flat line for several years, and we don't see Sydney lost $190,000 in 2 years not that long ago. So it had a long way to fall. The other reason that they're not anywhere near as volatile, they do not have really big segments of their local workforce in the construction sector. They're occupied in other industry sectors. So they're not vulnerable to the oversupplying, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, very, very good, mate. Simon, that's fantastic. Great research. Go back, have a look at this video. Those graphics are there for you to have a look at. A lot of information inside those. But Simon, once again, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Kevin. One last thing. We've got a research report on this on the Propertyology website if you would like to read more about it.
Yep. Okay. So go to propertyology.com.au. Is it fairly obvious on the homepage somewhere?
Yes, it is. Yes. Wine regions, it will be in the heading.
Okay. Look for it and you'll find it. Propertyology.com.au. Simon Pressley, thanks for your time, mate.
Thanks, Kevin. Good on you.